Recently, Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked if he had spoken to President Donald Trump, and he shrugged it off and said, "Who cares?" Well, he has since sort of apologized for that flippant response. But it is critical that the two world leaders meet, not only for the future of Canada's economy, but also to maintain the relationship we have with our biggest trading partner. Hello, everyone. I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Lorrie Goldstein and Brian Lilley. So, Brian, I know for the elbows up crowd in Canada who hate Donald Trump. They love Carney's position that he doesn't meet with the president. He doesn't feel beholden to anything that the US says or does, and they're charting their own course. But that's just bad for Canada. But the two men finally see each other at the World Cup soccer draw. It's a critical thing, even although a brief encounter.
Yeah, I'd love to know what they both thought of our front page cover at the Toronto Sun, because both of them in their respective national team uniforms, I'm sure Donald Trump would come up with something like, well, I was the best soccer player at my school. I could have been there. Who knows? That's what people are saying. But Mark Carney is actually a huge soccer fan, and he looks very fit. So I'm betting he liked that one. But look, it is imperative that these guys talk. We can, run around the world looking for every opportunity to expand our trade, and we should. But that's going to take time, as we've discussed before. And so you've got more than 40,000 manufacturing jobs lost in Ontario. You've got crippling softwood lumber duties of about close to 45% British Columbia. That's impacting that industry and forestry jobs across British Columbia, Northern Ontario, Quebec to a lesser degree. All of these things are being hit. So we need to take the economy seriously. And I think that this was a brief encounter. It was at a feel-good moment. So my encouragement to the Prime Minister, and I hope he took it, was just go in there. Trump likes you. Lean into that and just say, like, hey, look, Donald, here's what we can do. Here's all the things. We'll buy the F-35. It's the best fighter jet anyway. We're going to participate in Golden Dome. You don't have to make any payments or, real decisions until long after Trump is out of office. We'll increase the amount of American auto parts in Canadian-built vehicles. That'll help your industry. By the way, the industry here in Canada tells me it would benefit them as well and would not hurt us at all. So these are all things that could happen. And, we could go, I think you should have gone in and said, you know what? If we restart the talks, I'll get American booze back on the shelves by early in the new year, because that's a huge irritant to the Americans.
Yeah.
Huge one. So, I hope Carney used this opportunity to put forward those ideas or something similar, because it's imperative that we get back to the table.
Well, unfortunately, Lori, as is always the case, we'll find out from the U.S. side, not the Canadian side, what was actually said, and we'll get that information over the course of a day or so. But regardless of the brief encounter, there was a time when U.S., Canada, and Mexico would meet. They called it the Three Amigos Summit back in the day. Of course, Prime Minister Carney is going to be seeing Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum as well, even though he tried to carve out sort of a separate deal with Mexico not too long ago. That what didn't go over so well. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, what Carney can accomplish in a conversation today with President Trump.
To me, it's all optics. To me, I note that look at what's happening is that the fact that there aren't any talks going on, or if they are, they're very low, and who knows. But compared to the beginning, when we were going to talk all the time and we were going to get a deal. So to me, what Carney and the Liberals, they've made a virtue of necessity. There are no talks, or no significant talks, so they say that's part of their strategy. No, it's not part of their strategy. It's that the facts on the ground have changed. Having said that, I agree with everything Brian said about what we could be saying, as opposed to such things as the Bob Ray, our now former ambassador to the United Nations, just ranting about Trump destroying the relationship with Canada in a tweet on social media. Like, look, okay, many Canadians, I get it. A lot of Canadians hate Trump. A lot of us are concerned about his policies on trade and tariffs, which often don't seem to make much sense. We have American businesses in Washington this week appearing before committees saying, "Don't blow up the Canada, U.S., Mexico trade agreement. It helps all of us." That's constructive, right? But we have so many of these voices in Canada that they're fixated on Orange Man bad,
Hmm.
and that doesn't get us anywhere. This lack of negotiation, the fact that tariffs on the sectoral tariffs are in place on steel, aluminum, other parts of our economy, it's causing real economic damage. People are losing their jobs, even people where the federal government has stepped in to try and help their companies lessen the blow. So this is real stuff. And so, look, I'm not in on these conversations and that, but it concerns me that we just seem to be going along. Oh no, this is all part of the strategy. We'll wait out Trump until the Americans, vote him out of office. Blah 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 blah. No, that's not a strategy. Um, uh, we need to get, even if it's not a deal per se, we need certainty. That's what's hurting our economy right now. It's the uncertainty.
And Brian, I think that's what a lot of Canadian businesses that are looking actually down at the US, who are making it incredibly attractive to come set up shop there, or if not in wholesale, at least some semblance of your manufacturing, your processing, whatever, to go down to the US. Canada is not competitive in that regard. In fact, we're making it even more difficult, perhaps even more onerous. So I'm wondering if there is any sort of short term accomplishment that Prime Minister Carney could say, come home with and say, all right, at minimum, we've got this piece set up.
I think we need to do several things. Change the mentality. The Americans don't consider themselves in a trade war with Canada. They
Right.
consider that they're in the middle of negotiations. We
Hmm.
have a trade war mentality. That's going to affect how you look at everything. And so when Stellantis announced that they were putting the Jeep Compass production in Illinois, they didn't move it from Brampton. It was never in Brampton. It was just hoped that it might go there. We
Right.
took it as, you're taking jobs away from us. You're taking a vehicle that was being made here, never was, and you're shipping it to the States. We retaliated against the company by getting rid of remittances they'd been getting on tariffs. And then the next day they're in the White House saying, "You see what Canada did to us?" And that was the day before Trump called off all talks. That was part of it. It wasn't just this ad. It's that we are often idiots to our own selves. We are in the middle of trying to get tariffs lifted, trying to get a deal with the Americans, and we've got the CRTC and the Heritage Department trying to put more restrictions and costs on the big US streamers. Netflix just bought Warner Brothers, an $87 billion deal. They just bought Warner Brothers. They spend a lot of money in Canada. The CRTC is trying to tell Netflix and Prime and any other streamer, oh, you have to pay into a fund to pay for local TV news coverage on broadcast networks. Why? Well, because the cable companies used to have to do that, and you're the new cable companies, so you have to do this. It's going to cost them a lot of money. You've got all these things that are causing trade irritants with the United States that we're adding to, while trying to say, "But give us a deal. Let us off the tariffs." We keep being our own worst enemy, and then on the competitive side, like we've talked about this before, Nutrien. Why did Nutrien, the potash giant based in Saskatoon, decide that they're going to invest $1 billion to upgrade a deep water port in Washington state instead of Canada? Trade, regulatory environment, tax environment, the fact that you can get two railroads servicing that port instead of just one. And in Canada, we've had a lot of work stoppages at the ports and railroads lately. All of these things, we're not competitive and we get in our own way. We're continuing to pick fights with the Americans while asking them for peace.
Lorrie, last word to you. Brian has sort of listed a number of these, so what we refer to as the irritants. And then we can add on top of that now infamous ad that the Ford government put out, which threw a wrench into the whole thing not too long ago. But Of many countries, almost most countries around the world have negotiated a deal in some capacity with the United States. Not great for the US, not great for the other country, but somewhere in the middle. Canada has still not been able to achieve that. And those irritants that Brian just mentioned aside, this should have been, you would think this should have been the one deal that could have been negotiated, not easily, but with relative success for both countries, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, now, I mean, there's more at stake in Canada than most other countries because 80% of our exports go to them and 50% of our imports come from them. So naturally, it's a more complicated issue than in many other countries. But having said that, absolutely. How is it that this has been going on for months? This is the primary economic issue facing Canada. And Canadians are basically in the dark about what's going on. Week after week after, like originally, two people in a room was a meeting. They were telling us about that. Then they were telling us stories that Brian Lilley broke. They were very close to a deal, very close to a deal. And there was going to be, what was it, a July deadline? And then an August deadline. Those went by. And now we're into this kind of, it's like you're caught in the, you're sailing and there's no wind. You're caught in the Sargasso Sea. Nothing is happening, or nothing that we know of. And so to me, the other failure here is to keep Canadians informed of the progress of the most important economic relationship we have in the world, which everyone agrees will continue to be our most important economic relationship, even as we reasonably try to find other markets. Nothing wrong with doing that. And so to me, it's kind of startling that we're just in this limbo, and it's not good. And Canadians are losing jobs, and it's impacting the economy. We need a solution. I think the solution is for the government to start talking to us honestly about what's going on.
Well, the leaders met on the soccer pitch. But did Mark Carney actually score a goal? Time will tell. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go to thetorontosun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.